With so many incredible options on the market in 2026, choosing your next plane might feel like an impossible task. That's why we've done the research for you and put together a list of the 5 best single-engine piston aircraft you should have on your radar this year. Whether you're after speed, luxury, safety, or just the most capability for your money, we'll cover all the details you need to make an informed decision. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here are the top 5 single-engine piston planes of 2026. Kicking off our list at number 5 is a plane that needs no introduction because chances are you've already shared a pattern with one this week. The Cessna 182 Skylane has been in production on and off since 1956, with well over 23,000 built, and there's a simple reason it refuses to go away. It does almost everything well and almost nothing badly. Up front, the modern Skylane carries a 230 horsepower Lycoming Y054. Oh, a big displacement 6-cylinder that's about as relaxed as aircraft engines get. It's not chasing speed records. Plan on around 145 knots true in cruise, but it gets that done while sipping roughly 13 gallons an hour, and the engine barely feels like it's working. Fill the 87-gallon tanks and you're looking at a range in the neighborhood of 900 nautical miles, which means New York to Chicago without thinking about a fuel stop. Where the Skylane really earns its keep is in the loading department. With a useful load around 1,100 pounds, this is one of the few four-seaters where the phrase "full fuel, full seats" isn't a punchline. You can put 4 adults and bags on board, top the tanks, and still be legal. Try that in most of the planes later on this list. Add in a high wing that makes it stable, easy to land, forgiving in gusty conditions, and a dream for sightseeing passengers, and you start to understand the cult following. On the panel, new Skylanes come with the Garmin G1000NX wine flight deck, complete with the GFC 700 autopilot and Garmin's electronic stability and protection system quietly watching over you in the background. That's the same core avionics architecture you'll find in airplanes far higher up this list. In an airframe a student pilot could fly. No, it's not glamorous. Nobody parks a 182 on the ramp to turn heads. But if the mission is hauling real people and real bags to real places year after year, with the deepest parts and mechanic network in general aviation behind you, the Skylane isn't just on the list. It's the baseline every other plane here has to justify itself against. In 1947, Beechcraft introduced an airplane so far ahead of its time that, nearly 80 years later, it's still rolling off the production line. That airplane is the Bonanza. And at number 4, the G36 is the longest continuously produced aircraft in history. A record nothing else in aviation comes close to touching. Longevity alone doesn't earn a spot on this list, though. What does is the way a Bonanza flies. Pilots talk about Beechcraft handling the way car people talk about a vintage Porsche. The controls are perfectly harmonized. The airframe feels carved from a single block, and the trailing link landing gear soaks up arrivals that would embarrass you in anything else. There's a reason the phrase "built like a Beechcraft" exists. The G36 is powered by the 300 horsepower Continental Y0550B, a normally aspirated 6-cylinder that pulls this 6-seater along at around 174 knots true. Down lower, where the Bonanza lives best, expect fuel burns in the 15 to 16 gallon an hour range, and with 74 usable gallons aboard, you've got a practical range a bit over 900 nautical miles. Useful load comes in around 1,050 pounds, and this is where mission planning matters, because 6 seats and full tanks is not a combination the Bonanza, or frankly any piston single, will give you. Think of it as a 4 adults plus bags machine with 2 bonus seats for kids or short hops. Beechcraft hasn't let the panel age along with the design either. Today's G36 flies behind the Garmin G1000NX1 with the GFC 700 autopilot, synthetic vision, and electronic stability protection. 21st century avionics wrapped in a mid-century legend. And here's the part the spec sheet won't tell you. The cabin. With its big rear double doors and club seating option, the back of a Bonanza feels closer to a small business aircraft than a light single. If your passenger's comfort matters as much as your own, very little in this class compares. The Bonanza isn't the fastest plane here, and it's certainly not the newest idea, but quality, it turns out, doesn't have an expiration date. Let's talk about speed. 242 knots. That's the max cruise of the Mooney M20V Acclaim Ultra, our number 3 pick. And that single number makes it the fastest certified piston single in production. To put it in perspective, that's faster than some turboprops, achieved by an airplane burning avgas through a propeller. How does Mooney pull it off? Obsession, mostly. The M20 airframe has been refined for decades around one goal: cutting drag. The famously slim fuselage, the laminar flow wing, the trademark forward swept tail, the tightly sealed retractable gear, every inch of this airplane exists to slip through the air with as little resistance as possible. Then Mooney bolts on a twin turbocharged intercooled Continental TSYO 550G, rated at 280 horsepower, and lets it breathe all the way up to the Acclaim's 25,000-foot ceiling, where the thin air lets that slick airframe truly run. The efficiency story is just as impressive as the speed. Pushed hard up high, you'll feed it 17 to 18 gallons an hour, but pull it back and run lean of peak, and the Acclaim will still do speeds most planes on this list can't touch at all, on fuel flows in the mid-teens. With nearly 90 usable gallons on board, range stretches comfortably past 1,000 nautical miles. Few airplanes anywhere convert avgas into distance this effectively. The cockpit is thoroughly modern, with the Garmin G1000NXI suite and GFC 700 autopilot, and the Ultra update brought a wider pilot door, a composite shell around the famous steel cage cabin structure, and a noticeably nicer interior than Mooney's of old. Useful load sits right around 1,000 pounds, so treat it as a serious traveling machine for 2 or 3 people plus gear, rather than a family hauler. There are honest caveats. The cabin is snug compared to a Bonanza or a Cirrus. Mooney's production has been intermittent, and support depends on a smaller dealer network, and that slippery airframe demands discipline on speed management. But for the pilot who measures an airplane in knots per gallon, nothing else with a piston engine even enters the conversation. Our runner-up is the airplane that's been making everyone else on the ramp look a little old-fashioned. The Diamond DA50 RG is the boldest piston single to enter the market in years, and it breaks the rules in one very fundamental way. It doesn't burn avgas at all. Under that long carbon fiber cowl sits a Continental CD300, a liquid-cooled, twin-turbocharged, geared diesel engine producing 300 horsepower and running on Jet-A, the same fuel as the airliners. That matters for 2 reasons. First, availability. In much of the world, jet fuel is easier to find than avgas, and that gap is only widening. Second, efficiency. The DA50 sips as little as 9 gallons an hour at economy settings and around 12 to 14 in normal cruise. Its tanks hold just 50 gallons, which sounds tiny, until you realize diesel efficiency stretches that into roughly 750 nautical miles of range. It's not slow either. Plan on about 172 knots true in cruise, with around 180 available at full throttle, and the retractable gear, rare in a modern composite single, is part of how it gets there. Payload is a genuine strength too, just shy of 900 pounds in a cabin that seats 5 adults, with gull-wing doors and the kind of leg, shoulder, and headroom borrowed straight from Diamond's DA62 twin. The pilot experience might be the best part. The CD300 is controlled by dual full-authority digital engine controls, true FADEC, so there's no mixture knob and no prop lever, just a single power lever. Push it forward, and the computers handle the rest, like every modern turbine. Pair that with the Garmin G1000NXI flight deck and GFC 700 autopilot, and the workload in this airplane is remarkably light. All of it rides on Diamond's all-composite construction and a fleet safety record that's among the very best in general aviation. There are trade-offs. Diamond's flight controls use a center stick, which not everyone loves, and the dealer network is still thinner than the competition's. But the DA50 RG feels like the future of the piston single, and the future, it turns out, flies beautifully. And then there's number 1, which, let's be honest, you saw coming. The Cirrus SR22T takes the top spot for 2026, and the numbers behind that decision are almost unfair. The SR series has been the best-selling high-performance piston single on Earth for 24 consecutive years, with more than 11,000 delivered. No other airplane in this segment is even in the same zip code, but it's the newest version, the G7 Plus, that turns dominance into a landslide. Start with the machine itself. The SR22T is powered by a 315 horsepower twin-turbocharged Continental TS10550K, hauling its sleek composite airframe along at up to 213 knots true and climbing all the way to 25,000 feet. With 92 gallons of fuel aboard, range works out to roughly 1,000 nautical miles, and useful load lands around 1,250 pounds, enough flexibility with the 60/40 flex seating to configure for 5 occupants. Run it hard and it'll drink 18 gallons an hour, lean it out and cruise efficiently in the mid-teens while still outrunning almost everything else here. The panel is where Cirrus pulls away. The Perspective Touch Plus flight deck, built on Garmin's G3000 platform, brings big high-resolution displays and dual touchscreen controllers that feel closer to a light jet than a piston single. And then there's safety, the reason so many families choose this airplane. Every Cirrus comes standard with CAPS, the whole airframe parachute that has already brought hundreds of people home. The G7 Plus adds something no piston aircraft has ever had: safe return emergency auto land. If the pilot becomes incapacitated, a passenger presses one button and the airplane talks to air traffic control, picks an airport, flies the approach, lands, and shuts down the engine by itself. On top of that, the 2026 models add runway occupancy awareness and smart PA poquito heat, small touches that show where this company's head is. Critics will say you pay a premium for the badge, and the spec sheet says the Mooney is faster and the Diamond is thriftier. Both true, but no other airplane combines this much speed, technology, comfort, and survivability in one package, and that's why the Cirrus SR22T G7 Plus is our best single-engine piston plane of 2026. Before we wrap up, two quick shoutouts that didn't fit the countdown but absolutely deserve your attention. First, the trainers. The Cessna 172 Skyhawk remains the most produced aircraft in history and still the default answer for learning to fly. Simple, forgiving, supported everywhere on the planet. And if you want something more modern for the same job, the Diamond DA50 RG pairs delightful stick and rudder handling with a fuel-sipping Jet-A engine and one of the best safety records of any single ever built. Neither one belongs in a shootout with turbocharged cross-country machines, but if 2026 is the year you earn your license, these two are where it starts. And second, the smart money pick. Here's the truth. The new aircraft brochures won't tell you. The used market is where the value lives. A clean, well-maintained Bonanza, a Mooney with good logbooks, or a solid used 182 will do 80 or 90% of what the planes on this list do, for a fraction of the cost of admission. The avionics can be upgraded. The airframes are proven. Ask around any airport, and the pilots with the biggest grins are very often the ones who bought smart instead of new. And that's our list of the top 5 single-engine piston planes of 2026. From a workhorse that's been earning its keep since the 50s to an airplane that can literally land itself, it's never been a better or more interesting time to go plane shopping. Now we want to hear from you. Do you agree with our number one? Is the Cirrus really the king, or did your favorite get robbed? Let us know in the comments, especially you Mooney drivers. We know you're typing already. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe for more aviation content, and we'll see you in the next one.